Perfect.
Okay.
All right, so we have, let's see.
Aaron is also on the Zoom.
Oh, is Aaron on the Zoom too?
He
Aaron, are you
is.
there?
He's hiding apparently, but he is there.
I'm here.
Aha, perfect. All right, so I do believe we have a quorum. I haven't heard anything from Jeff, whether or not he was going to be able to make it tonight.
No. Ivan said he was not going to.
Yeah, I think that's everybody else, though. So I guess we can get started if everybody would like. I'll pull up my handy dandy electronic agenda here. Okay. Oh, and Jack, I just saw that the draft survey and public meeting agenda just went out.
Yes, just so you have a copy, and that's what we're going to be reviewing during the meeting tonight. So,
Oh, perfect. Did you
Yeah.
guys get that as well?
I just sent it to you, Alicia, Marin, and Amy, and I don't know if I have everyone's email. I'm sure I could find it somewhere. So
I can make sure I can pass it on for you, Jack. But you're going to review it via Zoom, right?
Yeah, that's what we'll be doing tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. All right. So we will go ahead and open the meeting at 5:18 p.m. And if I can find my agenda, here it is. So we'll start the meeting off with member updates. Do we have any member updates? All right. Any public input? I don't see any public. Any staff updates? All right, so.
I mean, I guess the only thing I have is the statistically valid survey RFQ did go out. So with that and its scheduled process, we would get the results from that survey the 6th of September.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. All right, so for our next agenda item, I just put a very basic meeting with and planning updates from representatives from Dotson and Blinker, but we will be reviewing the public meeting items and agendas, as well as the survey as separate line items on the agenda for tonight. But were there any topics that I may have missed on the agenda that Dotson and Blinker that you guys would like to cover? Any updates outside of those two particular matters?
Thanks, Andrew. We've been in touch with Marin and Amy about doing an inventory of open space parcels, and so that's part part of the process we're engaged in right now. And I think Kathy, or is that the assessor's name?
Yeah.
Is going to be helping us with that. Aside from that, I think there is another something else that would be helpful to figure out who from the committee might be able to help us with, which is looking at the action steps from the 2016 plan and figuring out which have been implemented and which have not. We did that in a cursory way with Alicia, I think, in one of our preliminary meetings, but maybe we can do it in a more thorough way. Maybe some folks can help us with just seeing which of the action steps were implemented and which were not.
Certainly, and we can certainly add that to the next agenda, perhaps for the committee to review as well, and just kind of get input from everybody at large. But perfect.
Yeah, but no, I think tonight's the bulk of the meeting is to go over the survey and the first public meeting. That's what we're planning for. So
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So if you didn't have any more updates, do you want to jump right into the draft survey?
Sounds great. Yeah. I'm going to start with a PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll go just to actually to that Word doc that I shared with you. And you're welcome to share it by email with the rest of the committee if it's useful for people to look at their screens. But I'll share it with on my screen here.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, so whether we take a full 2 hours tonight, we may not need the full 2 hours, but this is the time that I was thinking we could use for take about 40 minutes to look at the community survey, and then in the second half look at the public meeting. I'm not sure if we're going to get to meet again before the public meeting, which is planned for May 16th. So we have a draft agenda for that, and would love to get your feedback on that as well. And we just reviewed updates. We're in the process of this task one, reviewing existing conditions and data. Everyone's been very helpful in helping us get all our data together. And we've been in touch with MAPC as well, and they've been helpful with the bike and ped plan data. So that's been really helpful. Thanks so much, and we're in good track for that. I highlighted the inventory, which I just mentioned. I think Kathy's going to help us with, and then the 2016 plan implementation, which we said we might be able to do at the next meeting. And if there's, maybe we can be in communication via email if there's specific questions that we have about some actions, whether they're implemented or not. But otherwise, I think we've been able to find all relevant plans and begin looking through those and going through trying to create maps to show the different parts of the inventory. And we're looking forward to being able to present all that on May 16th at the first public meeting. But then we're looking ahead to the next task, which is related to the public participation. We have the first public meeting in May, and then the second public meeting, which is more about visioning, in June. We've scheduled that for Wednesday, June 21st. And so we'll be quickly transitioning from the first public meeting, finishing up the existing conditions and getting ready for visioning activity, which will be in person on June 21st. And thanks so much, Alicia, for getting those flyers out there and getting this scheduled so quickly.
Thank you. Yeah.
No problem.
So, yeah. What's that?
No problem.
Great. Yeah, so I think we're doing well in the projected schedule that we talked about last meeting. And so here we are coming up on May. I suppose there is a question about subcommittees that we talked about last time, whether that was something we wanted to do, and maybe just like, I think we resolved that maybe we would talk to the Agricultural Commission. Is that the name of it that Jerry's on?
AgCom, yeah, Jerry.
Yeah.
So I think it would be good to start setting up dates for maybe some of those consultations as well. And whether that's before or after the public meeting on May 16th, I think it'd be really great to have as part of the outreach for that. If there's any special groups to reach out to, it'd be great to have as robust attendance for that as possible, representing different interests as much as possible. So that could be AgCom. Well, actually, I guess this is sort of getting into. I guess maybe we can come back to this when we talk about that public meeting, because I think that's starting to get into that. So let's start with the community survey, if that sounds good. First I'll go over some logistics for the community survey to get those ironed out, and then we'll look at some of the draft questions. As opposed to the other survey that Alicia mentioned, this is not going to be a statistically rigorous survey. It'll be publicly posted, available to anyone who wants to take it, and just try to gather as many voices as possible. And that's a lot easier and cheaper to do. And I think it'll be great to have the other survey in September, but to get this out as soon as possible, I think is what we're hoping for. So I guess one question I have about that is, since it's going to, I think we're envisioning it to be posted on a website and be publicly available. There's no way of restricting people, maybe people who live in neighboring towns or who see the survey or visiting Littleton. A question on the survey can ask, what is your connection to Littleton? Whether you're a resident, work in Littleton, visit Littleton, have some other connection. But just to clarify, I think that won't be something, since we're not sending it to particular households, it'll be open to anyone who comes across it. And there is a way, we're going to plan on using SurveyMonkey, and there's a way to monitor the IP addresses of people who take it so that one person won't be taking it multiple times. I don't think that's likely to occur. This is not a hugely politically kind of stimulating survey, so hopefully it's not gonna people aren't gonna try to manipulate the results. But we can look at that. But just to be on the same page with everyone on the committee, was this your expectation as well, that it would be open to anybody taking it?
I think that certainly adds a valuable component to it, perhaps. If you work in Littleton, I think your perspective would be helpful to some degree. The last survey that we did, I think, was very much targeted towards residents, but as you said, it's very hard to ensure that solely residents are taking it at the end of the day. So adding that part, what is your connection? Are you a resident? Do you work here? Do you own property here? That I think that would be good ultimately. And how do you guys feel about that?
Maybe school, kids that go to school here.
Yeah,
Because there are school choice.
Yeah, I wasn't
in.
sure if that was still.
Yeah. I think it's something that, particularly since it seems to be unavoidable, that we just want to capture as much information about. It's also probably going to be interesting to see where they're coming from. So kind of capture both the needs and interests and how far how far out we're affecting. We know that the playground gets pretty heavy regional usage, so capturing some of that would probably be good.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely have background questions at the end of the survey. I think the very first one in the background questions could be, do you live in Littleton? Do you work in Littleton? Do you live in a neighboring town? Do you visit Littleton? To try to figure that out. And like you said, Andrew, that could be interesting to have perspectives of people who work in Littleton but don't live there, but they may have an interest in recreational uses as an employee in the town.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Great. And I think going with that, there are some surveys that restrict one survey per household. I think we won't have a way of doing that, and so we're just planning on one for every individual. So one household could have multiple individuals taking the survey, but I think that within a household there could be a diversity of opinions and interests. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's,
Great. So for the time frame, we'd love to wrap up the survey before the second public meeting on June 21st. And I think 5 to 7 weeks would give a good window for a robust survey. And so we'd love to open it either the 1st of May or a week after that on May 8th. And then that would give us at least 5 weeks until June 11th. And we could extend it as late as June 18th if we wanted. We can start looking at results before we close it, or if we close it on June 11th, that'll give us a little more time to look at it before that second public meeting. I don't think that second public meeting won't spend much time on the results of the public survey, but we might be able to present a couple of findings from the survey at that meeting, just to close the loop with people who took the survey and give a little bit of an update on what we learned. It won't be as robust as what might go into the actual plan, but just an overview, if that sounds good to folks. And is there anything about the opening and closing dates that seems important to you all?
I think keeping it open as long as possible would probably be ideal. So a lot of people may see it and not initially take it right away, and we don't want to miss anybody. We want to get as much input as possible, I would think, for this process. So the longer we can keep it open, I think the better off in the long run we'll be in terms of gathering that important data and input.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great.
Jack, will
Yeah,
you just say what the dates were again? My apologies.
Sorry.
Will you say the start and end dates one more time?
Yeah, sure. Can you see them on the presentation here?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Oh, sorry. So potentially, we can try to have the survey ready to launch next week. I think we want to make sure we get to incorporate any changes that you all have. So that's a little bit ambitious to get it launched by Monday, but we could start at some point next week or the following Monday, May 8th. And then sounds like we'll plan on closing it June 18th. I mean, we could extend it beyond the 21st as well. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that either, if it seemed to make sense.
So the two really great opportunities that we have are our third Thursday event, which is a huge event where a lot of the local residents end up coming down, and that will be there's one on May 18th and one on June 15th. So we could really push it hard on those 2 days too.
Okay. So in that case, maybe it makes sense to keep it open longer, past that second public meeting, and just get as many people as possible. Is there a date that you think would make sense to close it on?
Maybe July 1, just in case.
Or wherever that falls on where July falls on the calendar this year.
Yeah, easy date to remember, the last day of June.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people end up going away for the month of July. It's kind of a ghost town. So that might be the best time frame to use to end it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, June 30 is a Friday, so
That works.
that's a good.
Great. Okay, that sounds good. June 30th.
And yeah, I don't know what the rest of the group thinks, but I think conservation wanted to chime in a little, and we may want to present the survey questions to a couple of the other committees. So
Yeah,
the 8th seems like a good target.
yeah, because Concom's meeting this Tuesday, and Park and Rec should look at it too. Maybe AgCom and a few other boards if possible. Even if they don't hold a meeting, perhaps it could be circulated to them, and maybe Alicia, maybe they could send it directly to you as opposed to their chair or other committee members, just to avoid any open meeting law violations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That would be great.
Perfect. Excellent. And did we want to have this in, oh, somebody's ringing in. Did we want to have this in paper copies at town hall, at the library, at these various events? Or did we want to maybe have like a QR code? Oh, here we are.
Great questions. Yeah. I think both and, right? Like have as in as many forms as possible for different people, different preferences.
Yeah.
So I think primarily, well, we have a SurveyMonkey account, so we were planning on launching it that way. If you have a different survey platform that you'd prefer to use, then we can do that. Do you have a preference about that? Okay.
I think that we actually used SurveyMonkey last time and it was very, very helpful.
So we did do one last time. I didn't remember that. So Andrew, maybe you can follow up with Jack and have that conversation because he was looking for that survey.
Oh, sure, certainly.
Yeah,
Actually,
that'd be great. Thank you.
I believe that Tim, our assistant agent for the Concom, actually found our old one not too long ago and sent it out to the Concom a couple days ago. But I can get that to you, Jack, and you can look it over.
That'd be great. Thank you. Look, since I haven't looked at that, it's possible that would, if there could be value to asking some of the same questions that were on that 7 years ago. And so that could potentially also change the survey a little bit, in addition to any feedback that the different committees might have.
Perfect.
So yeah, with SurveyMonkey, they allow you to create a QR code, and we could just put that on a flyer and on the web posting. It seems like there's a very fluid, nice system in place for posting on the town website, as the public meetings have already been posted. So posting it there would be great, and then any public spaces would be great, and then for hard copies, I think making it available at, like you said, the public library or schools is a great idea. I don't know if you feel like there are residents who might, be more likely to take it if it comes in the mail. That's of course more expensive and for you all, and so I don't know if that's an expectation, but having a few hard copies around or available at some clear places would be a great idea, I think.
I think we could work with like Elder and Human Services in the library and have some of the hard copies available. We just have to figure out how you want us to collect those and get them to you.
Great. Yeah. That's is it possible? Would it be possible? So obviously that is require your work. Is it possible to collect those and scan them somehow?
Yeah, I think so. You're going to get a really big PDF.
Yeah, that's fine. And then, yeah, I mean, if there's any that are already collected at the public meetings, we can pick them up too.
Well, that'd be great.
Awesome. Oh, so I think we just discussed different committees that might review this, and if there's a way they want to reach out to any targeted community members, that would be awesome. One of the goals of the update is to do an ADA self-evaluation, and I think it would be very helpful to have residents and community members who are familiar with ADA needs take the survey. as well as attend the public meetings. So if there's any way to reach out, maybe senior services or other groups that could help reach out to people and represent that voice, that'd be great to promote the survey. Littleton doesn't have any environmental justice block groups, but I think thinking about some of the qualifying block level status of lower income, minority status, or limited English proficiency that make up environmental justice groups would be great to represent those. And if there's any groups in town that might be able to share the survey with any communities that might be representing environmental justice groups, that'd be great as well. But Littleton itself doesn't actually have an environmental justice block group. The surrounding communities do, but I think it would be great to have as much diversity of people taking the survey as possible. Which brings the last question: if there were any other language speaking house, if there's a significant number of households that spoke another language, if it was worth having any translation of the survey, if that's something we should aim for. If that doesn't seem like a huge need, then it certainly saves work not to do that. But I wanted to ask about that as well.
That could be a potential thing that pops up. It's hard to say what languages we might translate it into, but if we had the ability to do so upon request, I think that'd be very important to gather that additional information if somebody didn't speak the language, the English language, and wanted to participate. But I'm not sure how we could pre-plan for that.
I wonder even if you do a Google Translate on the SurveyMonkey,
Oh yeah,
is that, I don't know how, maybe we look at what that looks like and how
easily
badly it warps it, or
sure.
Is it still appropriate or
Google Docs.
roughly accurate?
that's a good idea.
Because I don't think there are a number of other languages spoken, but I don't know in what volume, or Alicia, do you get
don't.
non-English speakers very often?
That's one of the discussions that we're going to have with the statistically valid survey, whomever we end up going with, and to figure out what we want to do with that. But I think the majority of it would be, we would try to use something like Google Translate to be able to translate that. But yeah, as far as like being able to outright identify any specific language that we would need, I can't think of any off the top of my head. We're like 90% white, so I think it's majority is going to be English for sure. Yeah.
Well, great. That sounds like a good plan. And if in any outreach you come across that need, please let us know. We can try to do our part for that. But yeah, hopefully, I think Google Translate is actually a pretty amazing tool. So in crafting the survey, there are 4 objectives that seemed important, and broadly speaking, these the first one is about sort of existing conditions, needs and resources, or resources and needs. The second one is about values and priorities. The third is policies and actions, and then the fourth is ways of gauging interest in community engagement. Though actually, I think we didn't include too many questions related to that fourth objective. We could include more. But so the questions are trying to get at these objectives. First, to identify what are the key open space and recreation resources and needs. So what assets exist and what needs exist. So this could be for conservation areas, recreation facilities, and the accessibility of those, as well as programming. And then the second one is trying to identify what are the community values that inform their interest in open space and recreation. What do they care about? I think that is important for crafting goals and a vision for the plan. And what is it that people prioritize most when they think about open space protection and recreational, creating recreational facilities and opportunities. And then we're also hoping to learn how people would like to see the town act, what policies and actions, including funding mechanisms, and if there's any regulations involved for implementing the actions that the plan will recommend. So keeping these objectives in mind, sorry, one more thing before we look at the actual questions. So this is just an introduction, trying to, brief statement to frame the entire survey. This introduction sort of presents the main questions that the survey is trying to get at about what do people care about in Littleton, what do they want to preserve, what recreation opportunities do they want to see, explaining briefly where the survey, how the results will be used to help update the plan, which qualifies the town for state grants, and then some logistics about how to take the survey. I put your contact information on this, Alicia. I don't know if I didn't ask you for that. So if you would like, yeah, okay. So if there's questions that come up, I suppose they have a way to reach you, and you can forward them to us as well. And then I'll include the date, June 30th, for finishing it, not May. So now I'm going to switch to the actual document with the questions. We'll take a look at those. Okay, so the first couple of questions are about trying to identify those existing conditions. What are the resources people value, and what are the needs that they identify? The first question is, what kinds of open space do you value most? And the questions are set up right now. It's actually a little harder to envision what the survey will look like, because the way, creating the survey in SurveyMonkey allows you to set up the system for answering the question, whether it's multiple choice or select one, or like a Likert scale between 1 and 3. So the way that this draft reads, it has the question, it has the way, in parentheses, how people should answer that question, and then the answer choices. These are some sort of broad themes for open space, and different kinds of open space, and trying to understand. This is also about people's values in addition to identifying existing resources. So what is it that people value when they think of open space? Whether it's natural forested areas and natural resources, farmland, scenic qualities, trails, or recreational facilities. The second question drills in down deeper into recreation. And so it sort of provides a large list of recreational activities grouped by different themes, and asking people to identify what they like to do, and if it's in Littleton or if it's in neighboring other towns, or if maybe they don't currently do it, they could put it on a town wish list. Or if they have no interest in that activity, then they'd select not applicable. So the goal here is to see, okay, what are the activities people gravitate towards and are enjoying doing the most? And could be of interest to learn if that's not in Littleton, if it's in another town. So that maybe people are looking elsewhere to do some of these activities, even if they don't do them in Littleton. So these activities don't all represent what's currently available in Littleton, maybe. And it could be what people might want, but also what might currently exist as well.
That, just the way the question is worded, I'm assuming that we're directing this primarily to adults, so should we have something about you or your family, or something along that you and your children, or, you know, I mean, I think a lot of the activity, there's both adult and youth activity around all these sports.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I don't know if we want to sort of split that out, or in terms of adult participation versus youth participation.
Yeah, that could be worth asking. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Is there a way to
guess-
do it without getting too complicated is the question, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
You'd probably have to have a separate question or a parallel question, right?
So like one question aimed for adult activities and one question aimed for youth activities.
You are a youth or have a youth in the household.
Or if, I mean, sometimes, I don't know if it's SurveyMonkey or others have you can have one set of columns to check off the in Littleton, in town, wish list, whatever, and then another column that could be youth or adult.
Right. That like, yeah, there could be at the end of any option if you want to indicate youth or adult.
Right.
I'd like to see if we can find a way to squeeze in non-human recreation, such as a dog park. I just don't know where that fits within that
Not sure
spot.
that's
But
recreation necessarily, but right.
that is something that
Absolutely.
besides me is something that people discuss a lot in this town.
Sure.
So I think having that thought that they know that's available to them, not guaranteed by any stretch, but at least, something to think about is important too.
Yeah, certainly if everybody says, I go to a dog park in the next town over, you want to know that.
The other thing I would just acknowledge on there, I didn't see all the water stuff, but like a splash pad was something that's come in the past, or, so I don't know if that's something that we want to do. Ice skating as well. Yeah. Oh, you have ice skating. I see that. Thank you.
There's a lot to read here, but yeah, so we have hockey and ice skating. Splash pad would be good to add. I think that would be.
You could put it in the park activity. I think I saw that down there.
There's also outdoor facility activities included a swimming outdoor pool.
Okay. Yep.
And then there is park activities, which is less facility oriented and more sort of about
Doing.
the space of parks, I guess.
We probably could add sailing to the outdoor water activities.
Yeah, that's really popular for us.
Really
Yes.
cool. Where on Long Pond? Or-
Yep.
Awesome.
Guess kayaking would fall in there.
Yeah, I think that was in kayak.
Was that
was in there.
Yeah.
Now, how about access, like parking, parking spaces, or
Yeah. That's comes up in a later question.
Okay.
And to your comment, Aaron, we have under trail activities, we have dog walking. However, I don't know if that's gets at the full question of, and dog walking comes up later because we understand that might be a really important issue both for dog owners and non-dog owners. So yeah, if there may be If you,
Yeah,
if
the
we-
dog walking on a trail is definitely different because they have to be leashed in this town or minimally under some sort of very incredibly strict voice control. So dog walking on trails is a hot subject too.
Yeah.
And you know,
In park activities, you could put dog socialization. I don't know if that's gonna get to the answer that you're looking for, but I mean, that's what people would be doing in a park, right? Socializing their dogs.
please.
yeah,
dog
there
playtime.
also, I mean, we could put it under outdoor facility activities if we're thinking about a dog park specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely on our capital project list, so it should definitely be in there.
I'm just gonna stop share real quick because I want to turn on my track changes so I can just make sure I'm tracking these changes. If there's any of these that seem not relevant as well, that would be useful information to know. I put like equestrian sports. I think there's, you know, there may be horse folks out there, but I don't know that. So yeah, any feedback, any further feedback on this list, adding other ideas would be great.
I'm sure we'll talk about it later, Jack, but when do you want information, I guess, responses back to this?
Whatever feels realistic for you all. I think this doesn't take a lot of work to edit, fortunately, you know, as opposed to more of a narrative text. So I don't think it'll be a huge turnaround time between getting your edits and finalizing the survey. But you know, but also we want to give the window as much time as possible. So given that you're on vacation this week, Alicia, and that it needs to circulate, you know, I think if we were to say by Wednesday next week, then we would have the end of next week, and then we could have it ready for the following Monday. But if it's easier to say by the end of next week, we could just put it out on Tuesday or Wednesday the week after. That would be the 9th or the 10th of May.
I think that sounds good. I mean, I think a lot of different people are going to want to provide input to this, and it may take a little bit of time. I hate to slow it down a little bit, but I think it's really important that they get their input in.
For sure, yeah. I think it's better than rushing a couple days.
The only question is going to be, yeah, if we're going to groups that are not going to have meetings before then, how do we
Get their input.
incorporate? How do we decide what to do with the input? Like,
So I think what we could do in that scenario is we could send each chair or the board directly the draft survey. They
Yeah.
could review it and not discuss it amongst themselves and just email Alicia or you know, whoever we designate to get the responses back and then pass them on to.
yeah, no, there's like, so, you know, if you come back and you say, you know, somebody says we definitely should have this and somebody else says we definitely should.
Oh, yes, I see what you mean. I see what you mean.
Somebody has to make that final call as to do we include something or not include something or modify a question in some fashion or another.
This is true. It does put us in a bit of a predicament.
And I don't know how, you know, if you know, if we get so many things back, we add another 10 minutes to the survey, does that push us out of a reasonable bounds of, that's the only thing I'm concerned about is how do we keep it reasonable
Yeah.
and then incorporate things?
Would it make sense to maybe have a very brief meeting of this board on the deadline to just review everything and make final changes?
I'm fine with that.
I think, yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
yeah.
All right.
And maybe that, maybe that there may not be an issue, like it may be that there are a few minor suggestions and we don't have to do anything with it. But if there's any, I guess maybe that's Jack, if once you have the feedback, if there are any discrepancies or areas that need to be cleared up, then we can have a quick meeting. We'll plan to have it. And if we don't need it, we don't need it, but.
That works. Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. I don't think we have constraints on our end for the timeline here. So I think if it makes sense to take a little more time so that we can actually vet the survey the way we want to, then that's great. The only thing I can think of is in terms of advertising the survey and if there's a need to say when it's going to be launched in advance. I don't think that should be an issue though, because I think as soon as we launch it and start publicizing it then, since it'll be open for 6 weeks or more. So we can keep the launch date an aspirational launch date and then see how much time it actually takes to resolve any issues. And if we need to meet again, or if you all want to meet again before then.
Sounds good.
Is it even realistic to think the end of next week, a week from Friday, would give enough time for feedback?
I think so.
I think we could pull that off.
Great. I guess that would be Friday, May 5th. Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo.
Okay, well, onward. So trying to take this long list and which is trying to learn what people like to do and if they do it in Littleton or elsewhere. And then question 3 is asking them to prioritize the top 3 activities to just try to figure out if there's certain activities that are particularly popular. Then, if there's any consensus on that to help guide those resources. Question 4 is looking specifically at which areas people like to visit. And so this actually currently is left, requires filling in what those areas are. I've seen so to create this survey, we looked at a couple other surveys of other communities. Lexington had a really robust survey recently. Arlington and Wellesley and town of West Hampton, which is out here in Western Mass. And some of them looked like specifically listed a bunch of different recreation area facilities and conservation areas. And I think the benefit of that is to have a really specific idea of where people are visiting and how often. So that's what this question is trying to get at. I think what that also means is maybe not listing every single conservation area in town, but just the ones that seem most important to list. I think we can probably, take a good guess at that from looking at the resources we have in the last open space plan. But if there's any, we haven't done that yet, so that's why this doesn't have those listed yet. And so maybe actually I can do that tomorrow and resend it to you if that would be useful. And then if you want to add on to that, if there's anything that we missed. So maybe it'd be better to do that before you circulate it. Number 5 is
Sorry, Jack. I guess one question with that is, would you want to list literally every one of them, or prioritize among the ones that are most visited?
Yeah, I think a reasonable list could be like 10 to 15 locations. So that would be prioritizing a few, yeah. Do you all have any thoughts on that?
I mean, we only have, sorry, truly like 3 parks. And I think Amy would give a pretty good list of what has the most use as far as conservation goes.
Okay,
And then, well, then there's also, I think, the yeah, playing fields, school grounds, what other facilities? I think what else is,
Long Pond,
yeah, the beach, the not that we have access to it, but there's Mattawanakee Forge Pond. Is there any other?
We may have access to it, they don't want to.
I think we do.
Yeah, they were
Well-
talking about it at our last Clean Committee meeting. We have access to the boat launch whenever Beaver Brook opens.
Oh, yeah, yes, that's true. Actually, that's true, right. So through Beaver Brook, is that launch in Littleton or in?
That's Westford.
It is in Westford.
Yeah,
Okay,
we can
it's,
use it, I
it's
guess.
close, right? Yeah, I mean, they're not ours, but there are the, the horse farms for riding and, some of the other farms have open field or somewhat open field access. The list gets really long really quickly when
Yeah.
we start talking about.
Well, I was just thinking too, like, do we include commercial stuff like Metro Rock or the axe throwing place that just came into town?
Axe throwing.
I don't know. I don't know. They also do virtual golf too, you know?
Right.
What about all the other farms? Just the, the farms in town. Does that equate at all for space? If we're going to throw all those other things on.
well, yeah, it would be good to have a way of gauging how farms are valued. And this question's specifically asking about visiting for recreation purposes or scenic value. Do you think there are any farms that, provide that through corn maze or some kind of cultural events?
Yeah, yes.
Springdale, sorry, go ahead.
Springdale does, yeah. They have both, sort of food trucks and field days and barn visits and things like that.
Sorry, what was the name of it?
Springdale?
Springdale, yeah.
Springdale? Okay.
And then the community farm has public picking or service or some
Any Pickard has Pick Your Own Pumpkins.
pick your own pumpkins.
Like
Yeah.
Neshoba.
What's that?
Neshoba's in Westford, right? The Tube Park
Oh, Neshoba Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The tubing park is actually in Littleton.
in Littleton, that's what I thought, yeah.
Right.
I think it is a good question if there's, is there benefit?
If you just go and walk on your own, it's when they have an event, you can go and you're invited, but the farmers don't want people walking in their fields.
Yeah, generally, there's
I
Springdale.
tried to get a path through one of the farmers fields right along the rock wall, and they said, no, people will think everything that's in there they can take.
It is a good question about the value of including commercial, privately owned facilities in this question. Sort of what is the question looking just to get at town-owned facilities, or to get a larger sense of where are people recreating and how can the town support those activities or those places? What do you think? Do you feel like it's worth asking about commercial facilities?
I think it's something that would have some value because the town's not going to be able to provide every service to everyone. If somebody's really into axe throwing, we're not going to be building an axe throwing facility or things like that. So I think the commercial and the private aspect is definitely important because having a partnership with them is key in a lot of instances.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also again, this just keeps getting long, there's the boxing and martial arts and other fitness places. I don't know where that falls in the recreation part of this.
I don't know if we need to go that far in because that is something that we're going to try to cover on the statistically valid survey. Because, if we are able to create a community center, do we want to focus on creating a fitness, option as well with group workouts as well. So those are the type of things that we'll work on with that survey. I don't know if we need to do it here.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like it's getting, I don't know where to draw the line. That's, I guess,
I'm almost inclined to say maybe it's a separate question, so you have sort of the public facilities and then the private ones.
yeah, maybe that's a good way of doing it.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, well, it could also have the public facilities listed and a question about private facilities be open-ended for people to list if there's
Right,
too
or
many.
maybe it's an indoor versus outdoor sort of thing.
Yeah, that does create could create an easier way to divide some of these.
Because you do also have like basketball at the schools sort of thing as an indoor activity. I'm not sure what other indoor recreation goes on at schools, but
Mm. Mm.
I think because this list could be extremely long and risk also, missing something important or alienating a business that compares itself to another business that's on the list. Maybe it would make sense to only list the public facilities and places and not attempt to list the commercial ones, and we could maybe have an open-ended response for that or some other way of getting at that.
Yeah, that works.
okay. Yeah, I mean,
We could say something like what kinds of private commercial facilities would you like to see in town and just let them write it in.
or which ones have you visited in this time frame?
In the past year, maybe.
Yeah.
Of these ones that you've listed, I'm assuming all of these is the community farm publicly owned or?
It's not public.
Is it private?
No.
It's supported by donations, but it's private.
And the horse farms are also private.
There are lists of the town open space on the Conservation Trust has a list of their properties and
Conservation Commission has a list of properties. We could just take their list and put it in here. That might be interesting to those organizations as well. See who's visiting what.
It's a lot of,
space.
it's a lot of property.
It
It is
is.
a lot of properties.
When you, like you always do, where do you cut this off, you know? But I like the idea of not having anything private in there because, yeah, you're gonna miss somebody and then this is a publicly funded
Yeah,
survey and they're gonna feel slighted and complain, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So if you
Sure.
stick to Conservation Trust and the Conservation
town
Commission,
and-
you're pretty safe. Schools, of course, I think are valid as well.
right.
A lot of people.
But yeah, I mean, I think there are 28 trails.
There's a lot of properties there.
Yeah.
Well, good for us.
People say there aren't enough, so
Yeah. We could do better. Can always do better, but we do have a fine assortment right now.
but yeah, I mean, maybe that can be, hit some of the highlights and then other conservation properties or something like that, just to.
Name your top three, perhaps.
Well, I mean, as you said, Amy probably has a good idea of, Long Lake, Prouty, Oak Hill, Cloverdale, 5 others, and then other Williams and Yap, and then kind of go from there.
That's a good way to put it. Hit all the big ones and then let them list after that.
That's great. Amy's not here tonight. I'll follow up with her to make sure, flag this question for her, but if anyone else is able to follow up with her as well, then that would be great. Andrew, are you in touch with her at all? Or
Oh, yes.
okay.
I'll try to make a matrix of all the ones that Conservation Trust has and the other, because I think it'd be a good idea to put a box in there, it might be like a Rubik's Cube and have the names of them, people can just X through them or check the ones they want. Because I just don't see where you cut it off. Clearly, some of them are smaller than others, but I think we could fit it in there if we just didn't left align everything and we put them all and they could check off which ones they wanted to use. But if when I actually construct it, if it doesn't look good, then we don't have to do it. But otherwise, we're just doing hit or miss.
True. And some people may go to a property and not even know the name of it.
Well, Conservation Trust puts signs in front of everyone.
Doesn't mean anybody reads them.
Well, you park right next to it. They put it by the park. Yeah, okay, but I think that's a small percentage of people like Mill Hill, they may not know the name of, but there is a sign there. That's right.
So how about we look at those, go to the Conservation Trust and look for those lists and look at the 2016 OSRP, put together a draft list, which, and when we reshare this document with tonight's revisions, you can take a look at that and then just add on to it if there's something missing.
Sounds good.
Okay, number 5, what is your overall level of satisfaction with the following general goals for open space and recreation? And so number 5 and number 6 are both looking at trying to identify where people are satisfied and where they're dissatisfied. 5 is about general goals, 6 is about specifically on accessibility goals. So the first choice in 5 is thinking about passive recreation using parks, trails, and conservation areas. So things like walking, biking, picnicking, birding. The second is about more active recreation sports and those facilities. The third is about adequate protected farmland to allow for continued farming. The fourth is about protecting open space for natural resource preservation and water quality, including wildlife habitat. The fifth is about protecting open space to maintain community character and that the landscape value for scenic reasons and character. The sixth is about parking, so access for vehicles. The seventh is about access for other forms of transportation, sidewalks and bicycle paths, and bicycle kiosks. And this last one is overall safety and maintenance, how people feel about that. I think this might be the only question that explicitly gets at parking. And Aaron, you maybe mentioned parking earlier. And so if you'd like to include more detail on parking, we could either draw this out more in this question or another way.
Looks great to me, but I don't think I was the one that actually brought up the concern, so.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's
I
okay.
don't remember who that was.
Yeah, I brought up parking. I know, parking in the boat ramps were, an issue on one of the lakes in town. Trying to get access to the boat launch on, Mill Pond.
Great.
Not sure.
And so access specifically for vehicular access. Do you think that deserves it?
Spectacle Pond too is another, there's really no place to park, after you drop a boat. Space isn't that big, and it's like a hill.
I mean, the boat access is challenging. But
Yeah, it's challenging.
I've never had a problem parking there. But if, yeah, you're not putting anything sizable on that ramp,
Yeah. Slope is
challenging, aggressive. Yeah.
Though this is kind of going in a different direction, I did end up having to call the police to come through 300 King on Friday before I left. Because people were parking wherever they potentially could, and we put up fences to prevent that from happening. So instead of saying, oh, the park is full, let's come back in 20 minutes. No, it was like, let's park here and make the two-way entrance now a one-way.
Wow.
It's a big problem, but this is why, when we have one major playground in the area, it's massively overused. So if we had the ability to kind of spread out that use over town, I don't think we would see the issues that we see there now.
And right, and I would say the beach has similar parking issues at peak times. And actually, so does Oak Hill and
Oak Hill, yeah.
Oak Hill's
there
always
are a number of facilities that become overcrowded
Definitely.
at times.
And it's funny because we did just put in that secondary lot for Oak Hill and Harvard Road fairly recently. I would say within the last 5 years, and it's still packed. Still packed.
On the old one.
Oh, in the old one, absolutely. Yeah. The other one gets filled up
It doesn't, okay.
as well. Yeah. So maybe another parking lot over there.
Short of creating a separate question just for parking, and also I think it is valuable to keep the survey, right now it's 13 questions, and I think the shorter the better for people to actually complete it. One option is to include at the end of this question, like, to elaborate on any of your responses, and just get some open response feedback on any of the responses they had for this question. If there's specific areas they want to name for parking, or we could create a separate question that's specific about parking. sounds like you might already be aware of the problem areas for parking. We may not need to ask about that.
I mean, I would say that some of us are aware of some of them, so that is not, would be helpful to have more information.
I'm inclined to maybe leave it like this with the option to elaborate at the end, if that sounds all right.
Yeah.
And then in terms of boat launch access, that is a separate issue, I guess. So could create a separate point about that if that's a popular activity that, or an activity that's feels important to gauge the community on. Like boating areas have adequate access, something like that, or launch.
Well, that's not a bad point, actually, because Long Lake has great access, but a couple other ponds in town have zero access.
Like Manawanaki, like where.
Well, yeah, what's the one down Fort Pond? You have to paddle through a swamp to get into that.
Oh, Fort Pond, isn't that privately owned for the most part around?
I think it's a great pond designated by the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And there is a boat access, but it's through a swamp. Specifically designed to keep people out. And Speck Pond as well, there's a little parking area there. It's not kind of steep. I guess I couldn't complain too much about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fort Pond has been excluded by people for a long time.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that is because there isn't a,
Work.
I think most.
The Neshoba, there's a summer camp there.
Oh, yes, Camp Neshoba is
Camp
on.
Neshoba.
Yeah, so my understanding was that with that particular pond, it is pretty locked up with private land all around. And I don't think there's any public.
There's public access through a swamp. I'm not kidding.
Really?
There's public land, and that's the designated, that satisfies the laws of the land for a great pond to have public access. But you really can't go there except early in the spring if you use a pole.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, that's something that people might like to do, is go to Fort Pond. Because Long Lake has really good access. I mean, the state put in that ramp, and I don't think anybody can complain about that. No?
I mean, not that it's, well, let's leave that for another day.
It's a lot better than the ones at the other lakes, so. So along the lines, we should, wanting to, and how about even, Beaver Brook? Is there any way to park and put a canoe or something in Beaver Brook?
Not that I'm aware.
You know where it should be?
Harley.
Hey, excellent spot. I was thinking just across where we just bought all that property from the guy on the planning board who sold his barn and house.
Oh, there.
He has beautiful frontage there on the brook. It would be nice to make a little park there.
It's
I guess we're getting out of the. But yeah, maybe, so I would say, about public access to Beaver Brook and Fort Pond, be specific.
You think it's worth being specific on this question? Just to. really
I'm thinking
make
of
it-
the ones that don't have access, now. Do I
I
say
just-
yes? What does anybody else think?
I'm just worried it might ruffle some resident feathers when the, Fort Pond residents.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's a law.
Oh, I just,
It's supposed to be public access to that place.
sure. No, I agree.
Sorry, they don't like that.
I just did some really quick research and Jerry is right. So it is a great pond. And yes, there is the Finnish Society has a portion of it, and Camp Neshoba has another portion, but it says the nearest launch address is 1 Charter Way. So it's like a small land access between 2 private homes. So I could
I've
imagine.
done that, and it's a very steep bank to get down. You have to bring an inner tube. That's about all you can fit in there.
Here's a framing of it. Water bodies with public boat launches have adequate access. And then people know if they're public boat launches or not, I suppose, without naming them all.
Well, if you say water bodies with public boat launches, adequate access, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? Because if it has a public launch, then it probably has adequate access. Why don't we say water bodies without public boat launches?
Well, I guess we're curious about where are people supposed to be allowed to launch their boats? Or is it allowing them to? So are you saying that there are places where people are allowed to go bring their boats, but there's no launch?
Yeah, there's lots of bodies of water you can put your boat in. There's just no place to put it in. As I said, Beaver Brook, Fort Ponds,
Minnewanaki, right?
yeah, well, right by the bridge going up Beaver Brook Road, I see
There is
people put it in.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call that adequate, but it's, people do
it
it.
is a ramp, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the primary ramp. It sounds like that's the primary ramp for there.
Yeah, but now you can't get through there because it's closed.
It's a temporary problem.
That's not adequate anymore either. Although maybe it is, you just drive off the bridge. It's small enough. All right. The water bodies that allow public boating have adequate access. Yes. I like that.
Is it Jerry? I'm still learning everyone's names.
Yes, Jay.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I do have another one up on C. That one, I read it over a couple of times. Protected farmland is sufficient for adequate farming practices. I don't know what protected means, and adequate farming practices is fairly not defined either, but I have a replacement for it. I would say farmland is sufficient to supply my needs for locally grown food. Farmland is sufficient to supply my needs for locally grown food. The idea there is, if people want to see the farms remain in town, they have to shop at the stores. A lot of the farms in town don't want to be protected. They want to have it as their own private land, but they want to be able to run a business, and people should try shopping there rather than some of the other bigger options in town.
Yeah, this leaves it open-ended about whether they pursue an APR or just other ways of supporting local farms. So that seems good.
Yeah, but support would be just about all the farms that produce food in town have a farm store. And people shop there. It would enable those farms to continue their business and have that open space. They may not want to have an APR, but I think what people want is locally grown food and the rural aspect to be able to see that as they go down Route 2A.
Well, I think that is still a question, is there enough? There may be people who would want to see those properties remain rural without necessarily caring about shopping for local food.
Okay.
I grant you that that's a challenging
They
proposition.
want to see it
but-
rural, but so they want somebody else to pay for it, the view. So
I mean,
That's usually the case.
that's usually right.
So I'm just saying there's another option, that is, if people like the rural landscape, then they should support the local farmers. And that's one way to do
I
it.
mean, I fully agree with the sentiment, but I think there is the alternative of keeping the rural landscape separate from the food.
Yeah, but the thing is, farmers, they own that property. That's their property. So you can't tell it, I want you to keep your property looking the way it is, because it's not public land. You can do that on some public property, but I'm telling you, I am not a big landowner in town, but I'm on a board with them, and I can tell you they are fiercely independent. And the way to keep that farmland there for your visual pleasure is to support them through buying their products.
I guess
And
one
I think a lot
other,
of people-
well, one other point about this question or lens for it is this is hoping to inform actions the town can take as a whole, which I think in my planning mind, I was, thinking about, okay, what can the town government do? But this is open space plan is for everyone. I suppose just thinking, what is this question trying to learn? It's whether people are satisfied or not satisfied. And if they're not satisfied, then hopefully what can the town as a whole do to help people be more satisfied? So if someone was not satisfied, feeling that farmland is sufficient, the easiest thing is to say this is what the town government can do. But I guess there could be other things that come out of that. I think this framing leaves it open-ended in a nice way.
I think that's what I was trying to do. Say in a nice way that if they want it to stay, they have to support it. Now, if somebody may come back and say it doesn't support their need for locally grown food, there isn't enough locally grown food, then the town may look at maybe buying a parcel somewhere and try and get a farmer to come in. That's been tried before, along with, the one next to Cooper Farm. And then, of course, the orchard. That was attempted at the orchard as well. But it'll be interesting to see if people don't have an adequate supply of locally grown food. And if there enough people say that, then maybe the town could take action and get a piece of farmland, give the farmer a stipend, build him a house, all the things that would be necessary. To
Yeah,
recreate what we already have.
I guess I'm still stuck on, I think and maybe it's there's the protected open spaces sufficient to ensure the character of the landscape. Maybe there's something about, because I think that it's not that agricultural land is not protected, but it is part of the character of the landscape that we're trying to preserve.
Mhm.
I don't know how you capture that separate from the
Well,
food piece.
I think the difference is that the farmland is privately owned and the other things are publicly owned that we're looking at, that the other open spaces are all public. Which ones are not?
But I don't want to get us like too far off topic because this open space and recreation plan is specifically for town property. So for example, if we were able to get some sort of grant, whether it's a land grant or the park grant, that money couldn't go towards helping out that farmer unless we were doing something like you talked about, Jerry, like buying the land, building a house. So there's not a lot in this plan that I think can help assist the private farms.
Well, but on the regulation side, there was discussion in the planning board about like development right swaps.
Right. That fell flat.
It has fallen flat, but I think that falls into kind of this category of thing. If people wanted to see that done, there wasn't a lot of demand for it or interest in it. It didn't seem like, but.
So Alicia, what the answer to this question would be if people come back and say there isn't enough locally grown food in this town, then that would be something the government could go and try to figure out a way to make more locally grown food.
I guess maybe it's in E, if you took away protected, maybe that gets at what I'm just trying to figure out how do you get at keeping the character of the landscape piece that includes, I think, the farms and the horse farms and some of the other stuff that, does affect the character of the landscape in the town, but is not protected space at the moment.
Well, and the other one, you have a word there called desired, which leaves it wide open because some people may desire it to be full of houses. But it clearly says in the goals for this open space that the rural character, we want to maintain a rural character. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't put in ensure the rural character of the landscape, being that's part of the mission statement, right?
Yeah, that clarifies to a degree, I think. The phone is open.
Peter, do you have any other thoughts on this?
No, I think of a different thing every time somebody comes up with a good point. But yeah, I almost wonder if there should be. Do you have a separate question about farming or farmland?
I don't think we have a specific question about farmland.
I think it almost wants to be another separate question. I know you don't want to have that many more questions. That's a big issue.
Yeah, we have the next two questions are about value, or questions 7 and 8 are about values and actions. So they each touch on farmland in a long list of other topics. And 9. So yeah, in terms of could be worth having a question themed around people's values for farmland. Well, I'll give space to that if anyone has anything to say. Let that sit and keep moving through the remainder of the questions. 6 is about accessibility goals, and the 3, the same format: highly satisfied, satisfied, dissatisfied, no opinion, or I don't know. 3 topics are accessibly designed trails. So that would mean sufficient amount of leveled paths that allow for wheelchairs or strollers, ramps and handrails, handicapped accessible restrooms, or parking. The second one is about other types of needs. It includes visual needs. And I think this is admittedly a question I didn't get to put as much research into to learn what other needs there might be to include. The third is about language needs. But so if there's any feedback on what other accessibility goals there might be, that would be useful. And this is going to help us with the ADA self-evaluation, but also just in general, the accessibility goals for your facilities.
I don't know if it's helpful, Jack, but we got a grant a few years back where we got the access mat. So there is access at the beach. And we also purchased water wheelchairs that people can use for free.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is maybe a good other thing to list here is not just about trails, but also like equipment. And yeah, I guess if there's enough adequate equipment for accessibility.
Because our playgrounds are not accessible.
And nor are most of the trail systems and paths.
Okay. Keep moving, keep on time here. Number 7 is asking the values, qualities of open space that people value most. So this includes a range to try to capture anybody's feelings. I think I'm gonna add an other here. So everything from quality of life, property values, businesses, physical health and fitness, mental health, healthy aging, accessibility, cultural unity equity and justice, community connections, learning about nature, stewardship and conservation of natural resources, stewardship and conservation of water supply, and of agricultural resources. I think what we could add here is also about access to food, locally grown food. I think that might be a separate question or a separate value, perhaps. Getting at what you added before, Jerry. Or
Well, yeah, the fact that we added it before, though, I think it's not necessary here. This is a fairly long questionnaire. Yeah. I wouldn't see the value in adding it twice. That's what we I feel like that's what we asked them back on the other question. Is there enough locally grown food for your needs?
I guess what this question is trying to understand is rating each of these. Like, someone might care about all of these things. Which rise to the top? Like, what are their highest values when they think about open space and recreation? And so this is sort of the why, like what are the values informing people's interest in this? So I think we want to make sure to cover everything, all the different values, as opposed to assessing the existing conditions. This is asking, what do you value most?
Just is there a rationale for putting existing conditions before value or vice versa?
Yeah, great question. I think my rationale was thinking that people might, after seeing the concrete, might be most tuned into what motivates them abstractly, like what are their core values. But I think it could go the other way just as well. Like, first, maybe they're more ready to think about their core values before getting into the concrete questions. That's definitely open for any of this is on the table for changing. So what were you thinking?
It was just a curiosity. I guess you guys are the professionals at asking questions, and
That's the way I feel at this point.
I think it clearly one will impact the other. I just don't know which is the best way to get at what we're trying to figure out. So I'll leave that up to you guys.
It's a great question. All right, we'll keep on moving, thinking about these things. So the next question is about actions that the town can take. Framed as to improve the overall quality of life in the community. So acquiring land for recreation, acquiring land for conservation. Oh, you know what? Actually, this is a mistake. I'm sorry. This is combined with the next question. So which of the following policies or actions should Littleton pursue to support the management of open spaces? So developing or enhancing facilities for sports and recreation, programming for youth and or adults. We could separate those if it felt important. And then acquiring land for conservation, for agriculture or community gardens. Enhancing conservation areas through habitat restoration, invasive species management, nesting boxes, etc. Enhancing park facilities, increasing access, increasing maintenance of trails, developing trail network to link Littleton to neighboring towns, and to different conservation areas. Negotiating trail easements on private lands to ensure public access in perpetuity. I know that might be a controversial topic. Supporting and encouraging private landowners in managing farm and forest lands with best stewardship practices. And developing protective zoning or to revise local bylaws for public water supply and natural resources. And I haven't looked as much as at current zoning, so there probably is some of this zoning already existing. I think I'll just keep moving, and if yeah, just interrupt me whenever if there's any thoughts that come up. Are there specific areas? Yeah.
There was something, I know for the Clean Lakes Committee, we've talked about, areas for, water runoff. Like what we have at Long Pond, it's like a filtration, runoff area. We call it Frog Pond. So maybe for some of the lakes, keep some of that stuff out of the lakes, try to filter it. That we were kind of thinking about another area, even the Long Lake. On the other side of the hill. I don't know how you can incorporate that.
You're catching stormwater runoff and putting it into
Stormwater.
or something
Yeah, exactly.
constructed
Maybe we can call
rain
that
garden or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know how you can incorporate that into the.
protecting natural resources through stormwater management / pollution management, something like that.
And green infrastructure, maybe, or pollution management.
On L, I just have a question. I'm trying to get the connection between large scale solar installations and everything that was written before it. About developing, protecting zoning and revised bylaws for public water supply and natural resources. Then it says large scale solar installation. So can you explain that one? I don't really understand.
Solar installations tend to need stormwater management component. And so if there's existing regulations about solar, does it have adequate stormwater management?
You're talking about regulating solar installations with
Okay.
additional zoning regulations, probably, or site plan review. I would probably just take that out, Jack.
Yeah, I understand now that you explained it, but I wouldn't have unless you had. What the connection was.
Of a rabbit hole in a question that's already pretty long.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thanks. Number 10 is open-ended. If there's opportunity for people to name specific areas that they feel the town should try to protect. Or if already owned by the town, convert for recreation purposes. Number 11 is if you would support dedicating more of the town's budget to fund any of the actions and goals in questions 9 and 10. Number 12 is trying to sort of an oddball question, but it's actually, this is from the state guidance. Their sample survey included a question asking if you consider the town what sort of community, and it might be helpful to sort of try to understand how people view Littleton as a rural town, a better oh, I'm sorry, this shouldn't say Worcester. Boston, although it's fairly far from Boston, I don't know if that feels like a plausible response. A town in transition. And Yeah.
Important one, Jack. I'm just pointing that out. So, just the idea of the typology is something that I think a lot of people don't think of, but it is very important.
Like how people understand Littleton as a town. Yeah, so if there's anything that would improve this question, trying to understand the way they identify the town, feel free to add that, any ideas there. And then the last one is just open-ended for any other additional thoughts. And then there's a list of other possible questions that were considered, and then those will not be on the survey as it stands. And then there will be additional questions to learn about the background information of the people taking the survey. We already talked about what their connection to the town is, if they're a resident or work in Littleton or visit. And then there's questions that help just give a sense of the demographic background of the people taking the survey. So yeah, it's currently 13 questions. There's definitely a good.
They're chunky questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, chunky questions. I guess it's 12 questions. This one's 12 questions. And yeah, so, right, trying to keep it to a 10 to 15 minute survey, I think is important. And any input, if you feel like something's extraneous, let's cut it. So it can be a shorter survey.
So on number 10, Andrew, remember when we were on the Conservation Trust?
Mhm.
And when people were very sensitive about their name or their property getting on a list of things that they wanted the town to purchase.
Oh,
I'm thinking of
yes.
Mrs. Hartwell in particular. And this one is saying, would be people putting down perhaps other people's property that they think the town should buy. I don't have any problem with gaining that information, but then the results are going to be published. And the first time somebody's going to hear about this is when they read it and they see, the Hartwell ski area on here or something like that. And the landowner immediately is going to, I don't know, feel like they're under fire. So the Conservation Trust always handled it discreetly. So my problem is not in the question, it's in the answers you may get that have to be publicly shared.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Jerry, because I don't think we want specific parcels identified in this particular survey. Because if you say, hey, I want the town
My neighbor's property, go out there.
Yeah,
I'd rather park there.
Yeah. So I
Bring back
think,
the old clubhouse in Long Lake.
Yeah, so,
Right. Yeah. So make it an irrelevant question or not useful.
right.
Well, I mean, or you just say, we're not interested in specific parcels, just like it says, there are areas like down, north of Foster Street, or
that's a good way to word it. We could say
area
our
of a particular hill or a particular neighborhood.
Types of properties or. Yeah,
It's front landmines that,
I mean, I don't know, does this have to be made public, the responses, Jack? Or perhaps some of you know. To my knowledge, you don't have to publish the responses.
I would think if it was done with public money, the public would want to see the results of it. I don't know. Alicia,
Well-
over to you.
Yeah, you should put everything in there if,
Well,
it's kind of like an all or nothing, right? You can't just leave out this one question because of that. Would it be more efficient to maybe ask individuals? So one of the things the Park Commission had tried to do in the past was this idea of a 10-minute walk, and that you would have access to open space, recreation, whatever it was, within a 10-minute walk of where you live. So I don't know if it makes more sense to kind of like focus on that idea, because then you can kind of figure out areas where people don't have that. And then that's the area that we can look into and say, hey, are there any properties of folks that we could reach out to and start having those conversations?
So like, do you feel you have a area or trail that you can get to within 10-minute walk from where you live?
I would just leave it completely open and say, do you feel like you have access to open space and recreation within a 10-minute walk of where you live? But then it's really important to get that information of where specifically they're from. I mean, and that was one of the questions I had on the one above, because if you're asking people where they are you asking for their address? Are you asking them to say what precinct they're in? Like how do you want that specifically answered?
Yeah, I don't think having addresses would be useful in terms of compiling the data, but if you think knowing precincts, I mean, that might be helpful for this kind of question. What do you think?
I think maybe we don't necessarily need to know their address, but if they could say like what street that they live on, or that might be a little more useful than the precincts, because some of the precincts are large.
Although some streets might be large too, I suppose. Like,
Austin Street, Great Road, King Street. I mean, I wonder if that's something. I mean, if you have the addresses, I mean, that seems like a data problem to then figure out how to, take, if you have, I don't know, you have the address and you have this yes, no question. Is there an analysis to cluster those into places where there's is there a lot of yeses? Or are there a lot of nos? Can we heat map or something that to give us some information without having, excuse me, without the.
Yeah, we can look this up on a map of Littleton where all the open spaces are, and you can see where they're concentrated and who has commercial space around them and not much. So yeah, I guess I agree with finding this out, but I think we could find it out through research. Just by looking at where the open spaces are in town.
Well, but I think that's the reality of that versus the perception of that. Because I think in that walking space or the pedestrian and bicycle thing, they had some of those sort of
Questions like that one.
mapping issues of like distance to
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But I think there's a value to getting the perception of, you may have something that's 5 minutes away, but if it's across King Street, I don't feel like it's 5 minutes away.
Yeah, but how do you, I think the problem we're having here is figuring out where these people are who are answering the question. So without knowing that, it's not really valuable to us. Unless we just.
It is, because if there's a majority of people that say they don't feel like they have easy access to open space and recreation, then that's something we need to come up with goals to figure out how to fix that.
And I would say if we can collect an address, I mean, that's something we wouldn't publish. But if we can figure out a way to tie those two things together, there might be some value there. It's a data analysis thing that, I feel like can be done, but I just don't know how.
I think we could frame this as a yes, no question. And then if there could be a follow-up, if you care to share the general, I don't know the best way to, do people refer to neighborhoods or?
Not really.
Some, but not necessarily, right? I mean, I think if we can get the address, we can figure out how to deal with it later.
You can just say, where do you live? And they can put their address. They can say in the trailer park, they can say some general thing about where they live.
Yeah.
They don't have to put their address.
Would it make sense to maybe have a clickable map that's divided up into quadrants or some other configuration where instead of listing a street, they could say, oh, I'm in that little square of Littleton right there, and click on it? I don't know how practical that is or how that would even be done, but at least they wouldn't have to give out their address or even their street, and they might feel more comfortable submitting answers to us as opposed to us saying, hey, you're on Smith Street. Oh, I know who you are. You put that response. So you know what I mean? Like it would give them more anonymity in responding, and I think they'd be more comfortable. But I don't know how that would,
The map for the,
Precincts?
no, complete streets. There was, you could drop a pin on the map. So yeah, I mean, that's something, I don't know if you can do that, Survey Monkey, but there was
Survey
certainly
Monkey,
something,
yeah. I was gonna just ask, does Survey Monkey do that?
yeah, you could,
Yeah, no, unless it's added it since last summer, I don't think it's that advanced. I think there are probably like Qualtrics or other platforms that might do that are that we don't have. But what I know we did something similar to we did voting precincts with another community where they just said the number. They had a drop down list of which voting precinct they were part of with a map attached in case they didn't know. But I think you're saying that might be too large an area. We could try to break it into blocks, like census blocks. There would be, I think there would probably be a lot but that would be more specific without being too specific, and then assign each one a number, and they just choose the number.
I mean, part of this though is we have all the data about where open space and recreation is. So we can make a map that shows 10-minute walks from anywhere.
right.
You don't really need to ask people about that, do we?
I think it is an interesting question. I mean, partly because of the self-perception that
Right.
even if, I mean, it would be interesting if someone said no, but they live near a place that they didn't know about, and that's information too.
Right. Well, I think maybe a map that just gives them numbers and then they enter the number that's appropriate for their, just have a small map that maps numbers to each neighborhood in town or quadrant or whatever it is.
Right, maybe the I haven't looked at the assessor's maps to see how many zones there are in that. Like how many sub-maps there are.
I like that idea though, dividing up the map and then having them put the number as opposed to.
Yeah.
That would be a.
Should we just do the precinct?
The precincts are kind of big because we have.
That's good.
It's
Is that
only
all there is?
Three,
it's only three. I thought
yeah.
there was like 6.
Yeah, it's like 3.
Only 3. Oh wow.
Well, I wonder if the assessor got rid of the maps when.
No. I'm of the belief that you can get it from a map by just looking where the open spaces are. If the rest of the folks want to figure out, where people live and do the detail, then I think you've got to figure out a way to do it without making it too cumbersome as far as putting a map in. And I mean, I just know when I get a survey to do, I look at it, I get through like 4 or 5 questions, and I go down to see how many more there are. And if there's, too much, I just forget about it.
It's very true.
Sure, it's a very good point.
Yeah, so is it really worth it for how many people you're gonna have renege on this thing?
Right.
Start putting in maps.
I guess one other solution to this question is it could give it just optional if you feel comfortable sharing where you live as a part of question 9. Whether they say the neighbor, like the street address, or something more general than that. I'll think more about this and then revise this and reshare with the committee tomorrow. And as I think as many people's addresses as I can find. I don't know if I have everyone's address. We're actually close to 7:15, so this was really helpful though. Thanks for all the input, and would love more input if you have any. So
Jack, I can make sure
We're
you,
getting rid of question number 9, the one about asking people the things to acquire or donate.
Well, I think the new one was, do you have space near you?
That he wants somebody.
No,
the town to acquire.
is there space within a 10-minute walk of you?
No, it's what I'm talking about, the question before it, the one that talks about the nominating your neighbor's property to be bought by the town.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah, we'll get rid of that.
There you go, that's.
Yeah, there's all, yeah, I think this is a better question, and
Didn't have a line to it last time.
thanks, Jerry. Yeah, yeah, we'll nix it. There is a piece about this that talks about converting certain town-owned parcels for recreation. Sounds like that's something the town's already thinking about. I don't know if there's any value in asking about that.
no, we've been meeting as like a large group with conservation, assessors, building, park and recreation. Just to see, like, we've looked at the entire inventory. We've looked at everything completely. However, this was part of that discussion with Marin and Amy. We're not ready to just put that out there, because if we do, then it's like, you have to do these things. So, and those were just internal discussions that we were having amongst our group. So, yeah.
I can really briefly just go over the broad strokes of what the plan for the public meeting would be like, if you'd like to spend the last 2 minutes doing that, or we can, I shared that document, and you can give me feedback by email. But I think I could go over the broad strokes really quickly, if that would be, people don't have to leave right now. Okay. I think there's a lot of overlap between, or I guess the survey covers both existing conditions and values, and this public meeting is aimed at focusing more on existing conditions. It also is a way of informing the community about what the process is, and what its timeline is, and what open space and recreation plan is for. So the objectives are to identify, introduce the project, the background, process, and the role of community input, identify key open space and recreation resources and needs, including those recreation areas, facilities, accessibility, and programming, and discuss priorities for conservation, not interpretation. I'm not sure what, I think that was a change. Yeah, interpretation of natural, cultural, and historic resources.
I think I added that, check.
Great. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I didn't recognize the word at first. So the overall scope of the meeting is to present the project and its background, and then go over what findings we have for existing conditions, and try to do that in 45 minutes, and then break out into groups. And I think the most valuable tool for breakout groups would be a mapping activity for people to identify on Google Earth some places that they value, and places they feel need greater protection or better maintenance. So we've done this once before. It worked pretty well using pins on Google Earth over Zoom. And it just means that the facilitators involved need to know how to do that. And then try to summarize findings from that activity, and then report back. And that will give us some more idea about what conservation areas and recreation facilities people like to use and visit, and where they think maybe there need to be more maintenance or accessibility, or what trail connections, there could be better trail connections. So that's the gist of the meeting. And yeah, I think, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sounds good. So we'll review this a little further and get back to you guys with any other input and go from there.
Awesome.
And so,
Perfect. All right. Well, so in thinking of our next meeting date, let's see, what would make sense with our first workshop coming up or public meeting coming up? Do we want to meet before that date to kind of fine tune everything?
I would say no. I think we'll probably meet for that public meeting, the next meeting. I think I had promised that I would get the AgCom to meet with the group before that, and I made one attempt at that and didn't get much of a response, but I will try again and see if we can make that happen. But
I mean, I think
other than
we had talked about having at least a meeting posted probably for middle of end of next week,
Yeah, I have Friday, May 5th.
just to solve any issues that come up with the feedback from the various groups.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'll be able to make the 5th, but
Thursday, I mean, I think
Yeah,
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, somewhere in there, depending on what people's.
So
getting
third,
feedback
fourth,
from
or
groups,
fifth.
we-
So if we're getting, Conscom is gonna give feedback,
Oh, okay.
if we wanna reach out to
Clean Lakes.
Clean Lakes, any ag, if you guys come back with something, you know, if there's any conflict in, you
Okay.
know, don't ask this, that we need to
So-
settle before publish.
I just want to clarify. So are you saying that you want all of the groups to look at it and reassess the information that's given to us and we can respond to Jack by the 5th? Or are you saying that you want all of us to meet back again to talk about what our different groups have said?
my feeling is maybe the best way to handle it is to gather the input and then send out the final drafts of the survey to the committee members and maybe have one point person gather any additional input. But then again, how do we decide on the final version?
I mean, I think this group is able to do that because everyone represents someone on the committees that we would be asking those questions to. But ultimately, yeah, we need to have that decision before we actually put that survey out.
So I, for one, will say I'm not gonna get anything from the AgCom folks. I already pushed it out to them twice and
If
there's no
you don't think,
feedback.
you don't think if you send a draft to them, you'd get any feedback from
No.
Okay.
No.
Are they just
In
not
my case, I don't know about the lakes and everybody
Yeah,
else.
I don't know with the lakes, what else. I might get nothing. I may get a whole bunch of stuff, added questions. It's kind of up in the air with the Clean Lakes. It can be either way.
And my view is they sent me here to represent them.
Yeah, that's kind of how,
So-
that's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking, are there any, there probably are a couple of committees that are not represented that might have. There is a disability committee,
Historical commission.
historic, yeah. So there are a couple that are not represented that might have useful feedback. I just don't know if we have time and capability to incorporate
Yeah. But could their feedback also be embodied in the answers to the questions if they showed up for the public meeting and answered the questions? Maybe that would be sufficient for them.
That's a very good point.
Yes.
I guess maybe because you've got the old survey that had some, as long as we're not missing something huge, I think that's the. Yeah,
Well, I think the consultant has done lots of these and they're pretty much, corralled the issue.
Right.
We've just fine tuned it to the point where the last 5% benefit is gonna cost us a lot of time.
right. Okay.
I forgot your name, I'm sorry, and who just spoke?
That's
Jerry.
Jerry or Sullivan?
Sullivan, yeah, thanks.
Sullivan, yeah.
Solomon.
So I think actually before turning the revised draft back to you all, it would be great to look at the 2016 survey and just make sure there's nothing on there that would benefit this survey. So Andrew, if you're able to share that before tomorrow early, then I'll try to do that before I reshare a revised version with you all.
Absolutely. Actually, Jack, I'll see if I can send it to you right now.
Yeah, it could be handy to track any trends that there might show up if you show exactly the same question. Suddenly everybody's interested in something they weren't before, or vice versa.
Oh, here it is. Perfect. So actually, our assistant agent also gathered questions from Air and Weston when he was looking for ours. So I will forward that to you right
Perfect.
now.
One other question about the public meeting is how many people, if anyone from the committee might be able to serve as a facilitator. I think with the mapping activity, we want to have a good group of maybe 4 or 5 facilitators. I don't know how many we might be able to bring, Peter, but I think it'd be great to have a couple from the committee to help with that in case there's.
You mean the breakout groups?
Is that the
Yeah.
in-person or the virtual meeting?
It's virtual, yeah.
Sure.
So if we have turnout, if it's a great turnout and there's 60 people or more, we'd want to keep groups to, less than 12 people.
That shouldn't be a problem. I was on the one for BPAC. And so then they broke out into the groups and each group had 2 to 3 people on it. So if you're asking volunteers, I would volunteer to be a breakout coordinator.
Yeah, as long as you're comfortable sharing your screen and opening up, Google Maps, it's pretty straightforward. Well,
Yeah, I can be taught.
we have a little
Okay,
trick.
but we're gonna need, when we say facilitator, we're talking about breakout groups, not the entire thing, right?
Right.
Yeah, but breakout.
Unless you want to make a speech.
No, that's our chair.
There will be no speeches from the chair. Thank you.
I think we're gonna need more than one facilitator for the breakout group, so
I can do that also.
I can just vouch for it's a non-threatening environment. It's because you only have 1 or 2 people in it.
Jack, I can help you too if you need it.
Okay, that's great. I think then whoever's able to do that, we'll have a pre-meeting to go over the Google Earth and how to drop pins on that and what the facilitator role will be. So we'll do that. I think since this meeting's on a Tuesday, maybe the Monday before that, if that sounds good. 15th.
Yep, I won't forget anything between then. You're talking the day before, right?
Yeah, the day before.
Yeah, that's good. Still be fresh in my mind.
Just about the right amount of time.
All right, perfect.
Good.
Well, I think
Oh,
we've
and
covered-
Andrew, would you or Alicia, would you like to open the meeting by introducing the project?
Potentially.
Either one. Andrew, if you want to do it, you go for it. If not, I'm happy to do it. So whatever you need.
Oh, thank you, Alicia.
I think that would be better than my opening or Peter opening if one of you would like to. Just giving it the town's opening introduction. Just really brief.
Perfect.
We can flip a coin for it later, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's no commitment here. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
See you in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Likewise.
Thanks,
Have a good
everybody.
vacation, Alicia.
Have a great vacation.
Toodles.
We firm on that May
Oh,
May meeting?
Yes.
I think that's the question. Do we still need that meeting or?
I think we could probably do without it at this
Okay.
point. Did we want to set up our next regular meeting though?
In May, there's 5, my fingers just disappeared. That's odd. Blurred background. It's so weird.
Blurred background, magic hands.
I know, right? So there are 5 Tuesdays, and I remember the last Tuesday of the month worked for everybody. So I'm not sure if that's Tuesday number 4 or Tuesday number 5, or it doesn't matter.
Tuesday, May 30th.
The 30th is better for me than the 23rd, if that matters to anybody else.
I'm okay with either.
Perfect. Do you want to do like a 5:30, a little later? What's sounds good.
Open on, yeah.
Perfect. Jeff and Aaron, does 5:30 work for you on May 30th?
As of today, it looks okay, at least on one of my calendars.
Perfect. And Jeff, did I see a thumbs up? Perfect, thank you. All right, we will go with that. Tuesday, May 30th at 5:30. Excellent. All right, well, I do believe that that's everything. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, do we have a motion
Got
to
it.
adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right, all those in favor?
Third.
All right.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.